The Weight of a Concession, Chapter 1. The Triangle of Youth. Philadelphia, 1972. The city hummed with the distant thrum of rock and roll, the scent of sizzling cheesesteaks, and the vibrant, boundless energy of youth. For Amelia Hayes, 19 and brimming with unspoken dreams, life revolved around two people, Claire Harrison and Matt Carter. Claire was her best friend, her confidant, her other half. Claire was a whirlwind of fiery red hair, infectious laughter, and an unshakable confidence that both awed and occasionally intimidated Amelia. Claire was the one who pulled Amelia out of her shell, dared her to try new things, and painted their quiet lives in vivid, exhilarating strokes. Then there was Matt Carter. He materialized into their lives like a melody, a gifted music student at the Philadelphia Conservatory, his fingers dancing across piano keys with a grace that could steal your breath. Matt was quiet, contemplative, with soulful brown eyes that seemed to see right into Amelia's shy heart. He had a crooked smile that only appeared when he was truly amused, and when he spoke, his voice was a low, resonant baritone that made Amelia's stomach flutter. They met at a college mixer, a noisy, chaotic affair where most conversations were shouted over blaring music. But when Matt started playing an impromptu jazz piece on a neglected piano in the corner, the world seemed to slow down. Amelia, drawn by the haunting beauty of his music, found herself captivated. Claire, ever bold, was by her side, instantly charmed. It was immediate, the connection, not just between Amelia and Matt, but between all three of them. They spent their days immersed in Philadelphia's vibrant art scene, exploring hidden cafes and sharing their deepest thoughts on park benches along the Schuylkill River. They were inseparable, a perfect trio. But beneath the surface, a silent, unspoken tension began to build. Amelia felt it first, a profound, aching pull towards Matt. Every time he looked at her, every time their hands brushed, every time he shared a quiet joke only she understood, her heart soared. She saw the way his eyes lingered on her, a softness there that made her hope. She believed with a youthful certainty that he felt it too. But Claire saw it differently. Claire, who had always effortlessly claimed what she wanted, felt the same magnetic draw. One balmy evening as they walked home from a concert, Claire linked her arm through Amelia's. "Em," she said, her voice brimming with excitement, "I think I'm falling for Matt. Isn't he just incredible? I'm going to tell him how I feel." Amelia's heart plummeted. A cold dread seeped into her veins. She felt the blood drain from her face, but she forced a smile, a brittle, fragile thing. "He is, Claire," she managed, her voice thin. "He really is." The next day, Claire, with her characteristic fearlessness, cornered Matt after his piano practice. Amelia, pretending to study in the library, watched from a distance as Claire's animated gestures gave way to Matt's slight smile and then a shared laugh. When Claire returned, her face was flushed, her eyes sparkling. "He said yes, Em. We're going out. Can you believe it?" Amelia's throat tightened. A single tear pricked her eye, but she blinked it away. "That's wonderful, Claire," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'm so happy for you." And she was, in a twisted, painful way. She truly was. Claire was her best friend, and Claire was happy. But a part of Amelia's soul withered in that moment. She told herself it was for the best. Claire deserved happiness, and Amelia, ever the peacekeeper, knew she couldn't stand in the way of her friend's joy. She pushed her own feelings deep down, burying them under layers of forced smiles and cheerful encouragement. She pretended Matt was just a friend, a platonic part of their trio. She conceded. She stepped aside. The weight of that concession would follow her for the rest of her life. Chapter 2. A Love Observed. Amelia became an expert at feigning indifference. She watched Claire and Matt's relationship blossom, a beautiful, vibrant thing that should have brought her joy, but instead carved a hollow ache in her chest. They were the golden couple of the conservatory, their shared passion for music weaving an even tighter bond between them. Matt would often look at Amelia, a fleeting, almost questioning glance that made her heart leap. But she would quickly avert her eyes or offer a forced, bright smile, signaling nothing but friendship. They would spend hours at Matt's apartment, listening to him compose, his fingers dancing over the keys, lost in his own world of melodies. Claire would sit beside him, her head on his shoulder, basking in his talent. Amelia would sit a little apart, sketching in her notebook, observing, a silent witness to a love that could have been hers. She would notice the way Matt's hand would sometimes reach for Claire's, then hesitate, as if searching for something else, or the way he'd explain a complex musical theory, his eyes unconsciously drifting to Amelia, seeking her understanding. She'd offer a nod, a small, encouraging smile, forcing herself to be nothing more than a supportive friend. As graduation approached, their plans became concrete. Matt had been accepted into a prestigious music program in Los Angeles, and Claire, who had a knack for event planning, had already secured an internship with a major record label there. "We're going to conquer the world, Em," Claire had declared, her eyes sparkling with ambition. "You should come with us. We'll be famous, and you can be our official biographer." Amelia had laughed, a hollow sound. "I don't know, Claire. I've always liked Philadelphia, and my parents are here." She had other plans, unstated, unrealized. The thought of being in California, watching them build their dream life together, was a torment she couldn't bear. She'd decided to stay, to pursue her own quiet path, perhaps teaching elementary school. She had already started looking into graduate programs. The weeks leading up to their departure were a flurry of farewell parties, packing boxes, and bittersweet promises. Matt seemed subdued, almost melancholic, in the final days. He sought out Amelia, often finding her alone in the library or a quiet corner of the campus. "You know, Em," he said one afternoon, his voice unusually soft, "I'm really going to miss you, more than you know." Amelia's heart clenched. This was it, the moment. He was going to say it, but the words caught in her throat. She couldn't betray Claire, not now, not when they were so close to their new beginning. "I'll miss you too, Matt," she replied, her voice firm, resolute. "But you and Claire are going to do amazing things. I just know it." She saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Confusion? Disappointment? Before he nodded, a quiet sadness settling over his features. He left her then to help Claire with their final packing. And then tragedy struck. It was a clear, crisp Friday evening, 2 weeks before their planned departure. Claire, exhilarated by the thought of their new life, had gone to pick up some last-minute supplies for their road trip. A drunk driver, a sudden, violent impact. No witnesses, just the twisted wreckage of Claire's small car on a dark road. Claire Harrison, vibrant and full of life, was gone. Just like that. The news ripped through their small circle like a sonic boom. Amelia felt as if a part of her had been violently torn away. The shock was paralyzing. Her best friend, her laughter, her fire, extinguished in an instant. Matt was utterly, completely broken. He moved like a ghost through the funeral service, his eyes vacant, his face a mask of profound grief. He didn't speak to anyone, not really. He barely acknowledged Amelia, who stood just a few feet away, her own body trembling with a mixture of sorrow for Claire and a strange, desperate guilt for herself. The concession she had made, the love she had suppressed, now felt like a curse. She had sacrificed her own happiness for Claire, and now Claire was gone, and the man they both loved was lost in a grief so profound it seemed to consume him. A few days after the funeral, Matt disappeared. He left no note, no farewell. He simply left Philadelphia, carrying his shattered dreams and his broken heart. Amelia heard through a mutual acquaintance that he had gone to Portland, Oregon. Seeking solace in a new city, a new beginning, far from the haunting memories of their shared past. Amelia was left alone, adrift in a sea of grief, not just for Claire, but for Matt, and for the life that could have been. The weight of her concession felt heavier than ever, a suffocating burden of unspoken words and missed opportunities. She believed Matt had left because he couldn't bear to be near her, the living reminder of his lost love. She believed he hated her, or at least blamed her somehow. The thought was a bitter, unbearable truth. Chapter 3: A Life Forged in Concession. The years that followed were a testament to Amelia's quiet resilience. She stayed in Philadelphia as she had planned and pursued a career in teaching. She met Liam Winters, a kind, steady, and unremarkable man. Liam was a good man, stable, reliable, and deeply devoted to her. He offered her a life of quiet comfort and predictability, a stark contrast to the emotional maelstrom she had endured. He loved her unconditionally. Amelia married Liam not out of passion, but out of a desperate need for stability, for a haven from the storm of her past. She built a family with him, raising 2 wonderful children, creating a life filled with quiet joys. She was a loving wife and a dedicated mother, but a part of her heart remained locked away, a secret chamber holding the ghosts of Matt and Claire, and the persistent ache of what if. Every milestone felt bittersweet. Her wedding day, the birth of her children, family holidays, all moments where a quiet sorrow lingered. She often wondered about Matt. Where was he? Was he happy? Had he found love again? She'd occasionally see a small mention of a Matt Carter, renowned jazz pianist, in a music magazine, or a review of an album. She'd cut them out, store them in a hidden drawer, a silent testament to a love that had never truly died. She never dared to reach out. How could she? She had stepped aside. She had made her choice. And now he was Claire's ghost, a love that could never be. The guilt was a constant companion. She felt guilty for surviving Claire, guilty for the unspoken love she harbored for Matt, guilty for the life she had built with Liam, knowing her heart wasn't fully his. It was a silent burden, one she carried with grace, but it weighed her down, stealing the vibrant colors from her own existence. Liam passed away peacefully in his sleep, just as Richard, Evelyn's husband, had. After 35 years of marriage, Amelia was a widow. Her children, grown and with families of their own, were a comfort. Her granddaughter, Sophia, a bright, inquisitive girl with an old soul, was her particular joy. Sophia, like Sarah in Evelyn's story, was observant, She often noticed a profound sadness in her grandmother's eyes, a faraway look that spoke of unspoken stories. One rainy afternoon, a few months after Liam's passing, Amelia was sifting through old boxes in the attic, decluttering, trying to make sense of a lifetime of accumulated memories. Tucked away at the bottom of a dusty trunk, beneath old photo albums and faded concert tickets, she found it. A small, leather-bound diary. Claire's diary. Amelia's hands trembled as she opened it. The pages, filled with Claire's exuberant handwriting, smelled faintly of forgotten perfume. She flipped through the early entries, filled with the usual teenage musings about boys, classes, and dreams. Then she found the entries from 1972, the period when they had met Matt. Claire's words, raw and honest, spilled onto the page. May 10th, 1972. Matt is just something else. I can't stop thinking about him. Em seems to like him too, but she's so quiet. I hope she doesn't mind if I make my move. I always get what I want, don't I? But there's something in his eyes when he looks at her. A spark. Am I just imagining it? June 1st, 1972. Matt and I are officially a couple. I'm so happy. Em was so sweet about it. A little quiet, but she always is. Sometimes I wonder if I was too pushy. He seemed a little hesitant at first, but he said yes. I know he'll grow to love me fiercely. Maybe he already does. It just feels easy with me. July 15th, 1972. Had a strange conversation with Matt today. He asked me about Em. Said she was so perceptive, so deeply kind. I felt a pang of something. Jealousy? Guilt? I changed the subject quickly. I hate that feeling. He loves me. He has to. We're going to California. Amelia stared at the words, her heart hammering against her ribs. Claire had known. She had seen it. Matt's hesitation. His connection to Amelia. The easy feeling Claire described was perhaps not the profound connection Matt truly sought. Claire had felt guilty. Claire had wondered if she had taken him from Amelia. The revelation was a punch to the gut. All these years, Amelia had carried the guilt of her unspoken love, believing she had made the noble sacrifice. But Claire, too, had harbored a secret, a quiet acknowledgement of the deeper truth. The weight of Amelia's concession suddenly shifted, lightened by the shared burden, but also amplified by the tragic irony of it all. They had both suffered in silence, both carried secret guilt. Now, as an elderly woman, the truth of that triangular love, buried for decades, finally saw the light. Chapter 4. Echoes Across Decades. The diary was a lifeline, a bridge to a past that had never truly healed. Amelia spent days rereading Claire's words, piecing together the true narrative of their youthful entanglement. The more she read, the more she understood the complexities of Claire's own feelings, her love for Matt, mixed with an underlying insecurity and perhaps a subconscious awareness of Matt's true affections. With this new understanding, a different kind of longing began to bloom in Amelia's heart, not just for the boy Matt had been, but for the man he had become. She remembered the scattered articles she'd saved, the concert reviews. She went online, something she rarely did, and typed Matt Carter, jazz pianist. His name exploded across the search results. A celebrated musician, a respected professor at a prestigious university in Portland, Oregon. There were videos of him performing, his hair now silver, his face lined with age, but his eyes still held that same soulful intensity, that same thoughtful gaze. His fingers still danced across the keys, perhaps with more wisdom, more experience, but with the same profound emotion. He was still the Matt she remembered, only older, a testament to a life lived, a dream realized. Emilia felt a desperate urge to reach out, to hear his voice, to finally tell him the truth, to ask him everything. But what would she say? Remember me? The girl who stepped aside? It felt too raw, too vulnerable. Meanwhile, in Portland, Oregon, Matt Carter was living a life that on the surface seemed fulfilling. He had achieved critical acclaim as a jazz musician and composer, and found joy in teaching the next generation of talented students. But his personal life remained a quiet, solitary existence. He had never married, never truly loved again after Claire. The loss of Claire had been devastating. But just as profound was the unresolved pain of his connection with Emilia. He had often thought of her, the quiet, perceptive girl who had always understood him better than anyone. He remembered the hesitant glances, the unspoken words, the profound sense of comfort he felt in her presence. After Claire's death, in his grief-stricken state, he had simply fled, unable to bear the thought of staying in a place so full of painful memories. He had assumed Emilia, too, would move on, find happiness with someone else. He had heard through the grapevine that she had married, settled down. He had respected that, but a part of him had always wondered, why hadn't she reached out? Why hadn't he? The silence had become a chasm between them. A few months after Emilia found Claire's diary, Matt began his own quiet search. He was performing a concert in Philadelphia, a nostalgic return to his roots. The city brought back a flood of memories. Claire, vibrant and alive, and Emilia, quiet and watchful. He found himself thinking about Emilia constantly. He tried searching for her online, but Emilia Hayes was too common. He tried old university alumni networks, reaching out to mutual acquaintances, hoping for a lead. Then, an old friend, a former classmate from the conservatory, responded. Emilia Hayes? Yes, I know her. She married a good man, Liam Winters, raised a family. He passed away a few years ago. She still lives in Philadelphia. Emilia Winters now. Matt's heart leaped. She was in Philadelphia. She was a widow. The news was a jolt, a mixture of profound sadness for her loss and a sudden, terrifying hope. He quickly found her address through public records. It was a modest house, not far from their old haunts. He hesitated for days, a whirlwind of emotions churning within him. What would he say? Would she even remember him? Would she hate him for his abrupt departure? He decided on a letter, a long, heartfelt letter, pouring out 50 years of unspoken words, of regret, of a love that had never truly faded. He wrote of his grief, his confusion, his assumption that she had moved on. He spoke of his own solitary life, the music that had filled his days but never truly healed his heart. He apologized for leaving without a word, for not being there for her, for not understanding the depth of her own pain. He spoke of Claire, of his love for her, but also of the profound, undeniable connection he had always felt with Emilia. The letter arrived in Emilia's mailbox like a message from a different lifetime. She recognized the handwriting immediately, that elegant, familiar script. Her hands trembled as she opened it. As she read, tears streamed down her face, tears of sorrow for the lost years, but also tears of profound, overwhelming relief. He remembered her. He had carried her in his heart too. The guilt she had carried, the misunderstandings, the silence, it all began to unravel. Chapter 5: The Unspoken Truths. Their correspondence began cautiously, a slow, tender dance of tentative truths. Email by email, letter by letter, they pieced together the puzzle of their lives, filling in the vast, empty spaces of unspoken words and misunderstood intentions. Matt explained his profound grief after Claire's death, a grief so consuming that he had been unable to function, unable to face anyone, least of all Emilia, a living reminder of the life he had lost. He confessed he had heard she married and left Philadelphia, and out of respect and his own raw pain, he hadn't pursued it. "I was a coward, Emilia," he wrote. "I should have reached out. I should have been there for you." Emilia, in turn, confessed her own profound guilt, her belief that she had made a necessary sacrifice for Claire's happiness, and her subsequent belief that Matt had forgotten her or even resented her. She finally told him about Claire's diary, about the entries that revealed Claire's own doubts, her recognition of Matt's true feelings. The revelation of Claire's diary was a turning point. For Matt, it was a profound vindication, a confirmation of the unspoken connection he had always felt with Emilia, a connection he had suppressed out of loyalty to Claire. For Emilia, it was a release. The guilt that had shadowed her for decades began to lift, replaced by a sense of shared understanding, a quiet vindication. Claire, in her own way, had known. She had felt it too. They talked about their separate lives, the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and regrets. Matt spoke of his musical journey, his compositions infused with a melancholic beauty that spoke of a heart that had known profound loss. Emilia spoke of her children, her years as a teacher, her quiet, steady life with Liam. There was no resentment, only a deep, aching sadness for the time lost, and a growing sense of wonder at the serendipity of their reunion. Their conversations grew longer, deeper, filled with a renewed intimacy that transcended the decades. They spoke of the dreams they had once shared, the unspoken future that had been snatched away. They realized that despite the passage of time, despite the lives they had lived apart, the fundamental connection between them was still there, vibrant and undeniable. The same wit, the same understanding, the same profound sense of comfort in each other's presence. Emilia's granddaughter, Sophia, watched her grandmother transform. The quiet sadness that had always lingered in Emilia's eyes began to fade, replaced by a new spark, a youthful glow. Sophia, with her innate wisdom, encouraged her grandmother. "Grandma," she said one afternoon, "you deserve happiness. Don't let the past steal your future." The decision to meet was inevitable. They had to see if the chemistry, the connection, was still tangible, still real, outside the confines of letters and phone calls. They chose their old haunt, a small, unassuming cafe in downtown Philadelphia. Still miraculously in business, its old-world charm a comforting anchor in a rapidly changing city. It was the same cafe where Matt had first played for them, where they had shared countless conversations over steaming mugs of coffee. Chapter 6. The Unfinished Melody. The air in the cafe was thick with the scent of roasted coffee and old books, a comforting aroma that instantly transported Emilia back in time. She arrived early, her heart thrumming a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She chose a booth by the window, the same one they always used to claim, and ordered a black coffee, just as Matt used to drink it. Her gaze drifted to the street outside, each passing face a fleeting disappointment. Then she saw him. He stood for a moment at the cafe entrance, his silver hair catching the light, his gaze sweeping the room. He wore a simple tweed jacket, a familiar elegance about him. His face was etched with the wisdom of age, but his eyes, those deep, soulful brown eyes, were unmistakably his. He saw her. He walked towards her, each step measured, hesitant. Emilia felt a profound sense of déjà vu, as if time had folded back on itself. He reached the booth, and for a moment, they simply stood, gazing at each other, 50 years of unspoken words hanging in the air between them. "Emilia," he said, his voice a low, resonant baritone, exactly as she remembered, only softer, infused with emotion. "Matt," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. He slid into the booth opposite her, his hand reaching across the table, covering hers. His touch was warm, familiar, sending a jolt through her. "I can't believe it's you," he said, his voice husky. "You haven't changed, not really." Emilia chuckled through her tears. "Oh, Matt, we've both changed. Look at us. We're old." "Wiser," he corrected, his crooked smile finally making an appearance. A small, tentative curve of his lips that still had the power to make her heart flutter. And still here, which is a miracle. They talked for hours, the words flowing freely, effortlessly, as if no time had passed. They spoke of Claire, not with bitterness, but with a shared tenderness, a recognition of her vibrant spirit, and the tragic circumstances that had shaped all their lives. Emilia shared the diary entries, and Matt listened, his eyes filled with a profound understanding. "I always felt it in," he confessed, his voice low. "Something unspoken between us. But I was so young, so lost in my own grief, and so utterly blind. And I was so afraid of hurting Claire," Emilia admitted, tears welling in her eyes again. "I thought I was doing the right thing, conceding, stepping aside. It haunted me for decades." "It haunted me too," Matt said, squeezing her hand. "The silence, the knowledge that I left you to grieve alone. I should have come back for you, Em. I should have known." Forgiveness bloomed between them, a gentle healing balm for wounds that had festered for half a century. They forgave each other for the misunderstandings, for the youthful missteps, for the silence that had separated them. And in a quiet, profound way, they forgave fate and themselves. The music of their unfinished melody began to play again. A soft, tentative tune that promised harmony. Chapter 7, The Symphony of Second Chances. The reunion at the cafe was just the beginning. Matt extended his stay in Philadelphia. He and Emilia revisited their old haunts, walked the familiar streets, and spoke of their future, not as a distant dream, but as a tangible possibility. Their children, initially cautious, watched with a mixture of surprise and profound happiness as their mother, who had always been so reserved, bloomed under Matt's gentle attention. Mark, Emilia's son, met Matt with an open heart, seeing the genuine connection that sparked between them. Sophia, Emilia's granddaughter, became their biggest cheerleader, marveling at the real-life love story unfolding before her eyes. Matt, after years of living in Portland, made the decision to move back to Philadelphia. He found a small apartment near Emilia's new home, filled with his piano and his cherished musical scores. He began composing again, the music infused with a newfound lightness, a joy that had been absent for decades. They spent their days in quiet companionship, savoring every moment. Mornings began with coffee on Amelia's porch, watching the sunrise. Afternoons were spent listening to Matt play the piano, or taking long walks through the park, talking about everything and nothing. Evenings were filled with shared meals, laughter, and the comfortable silence that only true intimacy can bring. There were still echoes of the past, quiet moments of reflection for Claire, a shared sadness for the years lost. But the guilt, the heavy burden Amelia had carried, was gone, replaced by a profound sense of peace and gratitude. Their love story was a testament to fate, to second chances, and to the enduring power of a connection that simply refused to die. It wasn't the fiery youthful passion they had known, but something deeper, richer, a love refined by time, tempered by sorrow, and strengthened by forgiveness. They had both lived full lives, had known other loves, other losses. But the original spark, the profound understanding between them, had always lingered, a quiet promise waiting to be fulfilled. Amelia and Matt, in their twilight years, found a happiness they had thought forever lost. They learned that some melodies, however long interrupted, eventually find their way back to completion, creating a symphony of peace, joy, and the profound beauty of an unfinished love, finally brought to its harmonious end. They were living proof that some destinies, no matter how convoluted, eventually unfold as they were always meant to. The weight of the concession had finally lifted, allowing them to dance freely in the sunlight of their shared second chance.